Welcome, brave souls, to another haunting chapter of Ghost Girl Diaries, where the supernatural awaits, transmitting from the other side, where paranormal meets glamour. I'm your host this evening, Krystal Leandra, the Queen of the Dead, a paranormal filmmaker and investigator, and the glam behind the ghost hunt. Here we dive into spine-chilling hauntings, explore the unknown, and uncover the secrets across the most haunted locations in the world. Whether you're a believer or a skeptic, you're in for a thrill. So grab your EMF meter, your crystals, and your cross, because things are about to get supernatural with a little bit of glam. Let's get haunted. This is Ghost Girl Diaries. Welcome back to a paranormal underworld podcast. I know I haven't been uploading podcasts regularly, and I want to dive in immediately. Today I want to talk about dark energy. I want to talk about the D word, demons. I want to talk about collectively what we're experiencing. It's just heavy, and I haven't uploaded for a lot of reasons. I feel a sense of responsibility with the podcast. Is my heaviest piece of artwork, in my opinion, which I know sounds super basic, because if you're watching, the makeup and the fashion stuff, it's a lot of work. I put a lot of editing into it. I love what I do. But the podcast weighs heavy specifically because of rhetoric. I take rhetoric very extremely serious. I think there's a responsibility when it comes to being a public figure, when it comes to having a podcast, when it comes to meaning behind words. And I personally take it very serious when I'm speaking to you guys. And for me, the podcast is my biggest, by far, it's the biggest thing of all the content that I do. And I'm not talking about numbers on YouTube. I'm talking about numbers on my Spotify, numbers on I'm on every single streaming platform with my podcast, Apple, I don't even know all the platforms that I'm on. It's so many, because I sign up where you give your RSS feed, which is something called your podcast feed link, and you can sign up to link it to every. So the amount of downloads I have for my podcast is by far a lot over all of my other content. So my point is, I just take it very serious when I'm uploading. And I've been a big advocate in paranormal. I've been an advocate in film. I've been an advocate for women in film, women in paranormal. And I take that responsibility for you guys very serious. I think most people that listen to my podcast are from my old YouTube channel that had millions of views. Most of them download the podcast only because it was a mixture. I really had a lot more men following me from the old YouTube channel because paranormal is predominantly male, and they probably don't want to watch my fashion and makeup videos, which is fine. But if I know some support both, so thank you. But it's hard to put into words everything that's happening right now, and I don't have the words for it. And since the Epstein files dropped, I've been trying to find the words, and this is going back to the responsibility of rhetoric. People look to you for comfort. People look to you for community. And I've been trying to come up with words for comfort, and I can't. I'm really good at arguing my way out of things. I'm really, intelligent from everything I've been through with contract negotiations and production, as you guys know, most of you. I don't have anything to say. I don't have anything to say positively. I'm trying to not sound hopeless, but the world is very dark right now. And I know that you all feel it. I feel it. We are living through history currently, not just one thing. It is more than one thing. And it's really crazy because if you back up to last year, I was talking to you guys about leaving the networks, leaving the production companies, leaving the negotiations behind. And I also spoke about, I think it was October or November, I talked about who pulls the strings behind the networks. And I'm not talking about production companies. There is corruption within production companies as well. The corruption I've experienced with executive producers asking me to sleep with them for a contract, that's corruption itself. But I also had mentioned a lot of people were asking me questions like, why don't networks showcase paranormal shows that are not demon related. You know, like, why are all psychic mediums, why do they make them look crazy like Teresa Caputo? Why is Amy Allen from Dead Files portrayed as a female psychic, as the crazy one with psychic, crazy eyes and like crazy expressions? And my answer was, the owners of the networks are usually old money and extremely religious. Usually it goes into, Jewish families or Christianity or Catholicism, and they have religious money backing the networks. And I had said the perfect example was when Jimmy Kimmel got canceled for speaking against Trump, okay? That was the network. They have money related to religion, to religious beliefs, and they get the last say on how haunted paranormal is portrayed. And most of the time, it is only going to be portrayed by their version of the Bible. And that means if you are talking to ghosts and spirits, it is immediately a demon, period, because the Bible said so. Doesn't matter what version of the Bible you're reading, the Bible said so. The Bible said if you're hearing spirits, you're crazy, you're possessed, you're a witch, or it's a demon. So now that all of this Epstein stuff has come out, now that collectively, politically, everyone knows where I stand. Unfortunately, my career in production and paranormal became political. It didn't mean to. When I first went into paranormal and production, I did not mean to be political. However, I realized the patriarchy and misogyny and religious trauma that was creating what we see today as the paranormal community, and a bias against women in the in paranormal. And my stance in production and paranormal immediately became political, because I realized I was not only fighting for women in film, I was fighting for women in paranormal, but I was also fighting against the patriarchy, against misogyny, and I was fighting naturally for paranormal as a whole against religious trauma. And if, in my opinion, what I would call religious psychosis, which is the belief system behind any time you speak to a spirit, you're either possessed, you're a witch, or it's a demon. And I disagree with all of that. I disagree with all of that. It took me a minute to catch my bearings when I made the decision to fully leave production behind last August, September, okay? It took me until now, so maybe 6 or 7 months, to really say, okay, I will be opening my own production company. I will probably be doing my own production online only, maybe some film festival routes. We'll see how I go. I'm going to open a production company once I get to Colorado. However, if I decide to go this route, which I'm very solid in the decision now, I'm going to have to change who I am and become fearless. And what that means is, in the past, when I've spoke publicly on YouTube, I've done radio interviews, I've done magazine interviews, I've been in newspapers, I've done all kinds of public appearances, talking about women in film and the backside of paranormal production. But I've always been very careful with what I have said, because there's always a fear in the back of my mind that if a production company or a network gets wind of my real true opinion on paranormal and my real true opinion stance on religion, there was a chance I could be blacklisted. And I'm at a point now where I don't care about that, because I know for certain I will not be going back to the production studios, okay? And the reason is several. There's corruption within the system. There's corruption within the production companies. There's corruption within the networks itself. There's corruption within political power that you're seeing right now. There's corruption in religion. And there's extreme corruption with men, paranormal celebrities, and men executive producers in the paranormal industry. And because of all of the corruption that we're even seeing right now, I can't sit here and shut up anymore, and I'm not going to. I'm pretty threatening to the community, if I'm going to be honest, because I have worked on the Ghost Hunter side and that production company, and I've worked on the Ghost Adventure side, and I've seen the backside of all of in between, okay? And I'm really the only one. I'm one of one that has really seen the full scope of everything. I know a lot of people on the inside. I've done, not thousands, but hundreds of negotiations for my own production company, for my own series. And I am a threat to the system. And I used to be scared of that. And now I'm excited to be a threat to the system. So you're about to see a really big change in the way I've been presenting myself and my content as far as paranormal goes. So for this episode today, I'm going to need you to get your thinking caps on. This is not going to be a light discussion. This is going to be a critical thinking discussion, although I think a lot of my discussions are. But if you are entering my world of the underworld, okay, with all of my experience, 15 years experience in production as a producer, 17 film festival wins as a producer, millions of views on YouTube, a successful podcast, I am a filmmaker. I'm going to need you to listen to what I'm saying with my experience being in hundreds of haunted locations across the world, okay? So this is my experience not only on the professional side of paranormal film, but my experience and my passion in paranormal locations itself. And then obviously developing psychic medium abilities, okay? I have credentials to back myself up. And I know that if you're following me, that you know this, okay? Because most of you have been following me for years. But this is about to take a hard shift. And I need you to really listen to what I'm about to say. Who taught you to be afraid of the dark? I'm not talking about the dark outside of your window. I'm not talking about the Appalachian Mountains at nighttime. Not even the end of the hallway at 3 a.m. I mean the dark inside of the human experience, the shadow, the unseen, which create the edges of things that move that we don't know, the unknown. Who handed you that fear? Who handed you the fear of the unknown? Where did it come from? Was it yours? Was it inherited from your parents, from your family, from television, from a certain show you were watching? Have you encountered something that gave you that fear from paranormal, right? Or was it given to you? Was it packaged? Was it delivered? Was it repeated until it ended up feeling like the truth? Because I have spent the last 15 years inside of some of the darkest locations on the planet, right? I have experience with the film and actual paranormal. I'm a producer, but first I'm an investigator. I'm now a psychic medium. I've stood in rooms where something ancient still breathes. And I'm now going to tell you something that the industry never wanted you to know. The fear was never about protecting you. It was about controlling you. And today I'm burning the framework down. Today I'm going to talk about egregores because it is a real life living thing and we're witnessing it right now. What are demons exactly? Okay, what aren't they? I want to talk about the institutions that built them, the institutions that built the concept of evil that our society now believes. Now we know who is running those institutions, right? I want to talk about my 15 years inside of the industry. I was told to hide my parts of knowledge, the truth of myself, of things I believe, of things I've seen. I had to hide these parts of myself in order to access the industry. And it was a system that was never going to serve me anyway. And I want to talk about where I think we go from here. Because something's shifting in the collective. It seems dark, but there's some shit shifting and you know it. You can feel it. I can feel it, or you wouldn't be sitting here right now. The world is showing us something. I think that it's a collapse of a system that is long overdue to go down. So let's talk about it and actually do a deep dive on it. So working in the production industry, it's not me being a tourist. It's not me being a producer. It was me having a serious otherworldly experience, right? I want to define what an egregore is. This is a collective thought form, an entity that will actually emerge from a collective of thousands of people believing that it exists. Energy that can emerge from sustained beliefs, from fear, from religious trauma, from worship. If enough conscious minds believe that it exists, it will. I want to reference Einstein, right? Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It can only accumulate. It can transform. I'm not here to debunk the paranormal. I'm here to upgrade the conversation to the next level. Do I believe that there are energies that have not crossed over, that are stuck in the gray zone and refuse to go to the afterlife? 100%. I'm not talking about human entities. I'm talking about something that's in ancient texts. This is occult traditions from many different cultures around the world. Think about it. Every institution, religion, ideology itself commands a mass emotional investment, a mass emotional response, and that generates an egregore. The Catholic Church, national flags, pop culture icons all carry egregore energy at a scale we can't even comprehend. When fear specifically is the primary emotion leading this egregore, it is being channeled into a belief system. What does that entity build? The more people pour terror into a thought, person, place, or thing, shame, submission, even if it's a symbol, even if it's a name without a face, the more that symbol feeds on it. It doesn't matter if it started as real or constructed. It becomes a real collective animation, thought, a breathing thing. Demons have been fed from the human collective for over 2,000 years by some of the most emotionally activated humans on the planet. People of worship. Of course, they're powerful because you built them. I want to talk about some of my experiences that I've had with dark energy, okay? Demons, whatever you want to call it. I don't fear darkness. I do not have religious trauma. I was baptized, however, I did not study scripture. So maybe that's what sets me apart from the collective. I could take myself and another investigator and go into a location with dark energy. I will not have a dark experience. The person that had religious trauma will have a 100% dark experience. It's happened to me before with a producer on set. I have tried to hunt and chase down the dark energy. I can't access it. Why? My vibration is not at that level because I did not grow up with religious trauma, did not study religious scripture to be afraid of a quote demon. Therefore, it doesn't exist to me. And another really great example is this. You know, I've been to the Stanley Hotel hundreds of times. I can't even tell you. I've lived at that place practically. It was in my backyard growing up in Colorado. Okay. 217 is supposed to have like the darkest energy in that place, right? 217 is, you know, basically from The Shining. Stephen King is like this haunted room. Think about an egregore. May not actually exist, but now all of the people that have seen The Shining, 217, have put all this energy into that room, right? So even if something didn't exist before, it sure as hell does now. Let me tell you what, I've slept in that room like a baby and I've had no experiences. In fact, I've been so annoyed because I've stayed in that room so many times attempting to have an experience. Nothing ever happens. Now, I've stayed in other places in the actual hotel, in the manor house, the presidential suite, very haunted. I've had experiences in there. Never had an experience in 217. Why? I am not locked into the same frequency that everyone else is out of fear of this egregore that Stephen King built. I'm trying to think of, you know, the darkest location I've been to. And I'm going to be honest, I'm going to say it was Bobby Mackey's before it got shut down. I was at Bobby Mackey's in 2013, maybe 2014, okay? I got a private tour. I got to go with Wanda. I got to do a private investigation. There was only like 3 of us there. So let me tell you what, the accessibility was unlimited. So, I mean, I was there for a long time. So here's the weird thing. Because I really think Bobby Mackey's was one of the darkest experiences I've had. It was messed up. There's so many layers to that location though. Like it was a butcher shop, like way back in the 1800s or whatever. I don't remember the exact, you'll have to look up the history of it. It was a butcher shop, so there were animals mutilated. There were little kids that were, I think they had been like abducted as potential adoptive children, and they would force them to be doing slave labor. They would fall in like where they melt the animal fat and they would die instantly. There was prostitution. There was gang-related activity. There was unaliving. There were so many layers in that place, right? And that doesn't include people that were coming in to investigate, summoning stuff in, okay? Wanda told me that from her mouth. She said, I let people come in, I let paranormal groups come in, and they summon whatever they want, which I thought was unbelievable, by the way. So let me just say this. Different areas of Bobby Mackey's felt very different in certain locations. However, it was straight up just dark energy. Remember, there's also pregnant women that got attacked there. I just never was able to encounter something dark. I just wasn't. I tried so hard. I'm not saying it wasn't there. I was trying to have a dark encounter. I could feel the energy. I'm gonna be honest, I felt scared because it just felt like a bunch of murderers hanging around in spirit form. They probably were very scared to go to the other side and meet their maker for what they had done. But I could not encounter a terrifying experience. And once again, going back to most investigators, they go to a location where there's been demons summoned in. Of course, you're going to emit an energy of fear, right? Because you're like, oh my God, like what's actually here? And I'm just going to say, you could tell some shit had gone down in there. But once again, I still did not have an experience. There's a huge difference between residual energy, intelligent hauntings, and something that responds to belief. Here's another perfect example I have for you. I had a friend that used to be the resident the resident paranormal investigator at the Stanley Hotel. This was years ago, way back in the day. And she would do tour groups. I've talked about this story before. She would have tour groups, maybe 8 or 10 a day, maybe 10 to 15 people per group. She started telling a story, and I was a part of this. I was witnessing. I was bearing witness to this. She started telling a story in the admin building that there was a little girl that haunted. She had died there. It was a completely made up story. Didn't exist, was not real. That building actually was never haunted, okay? But she started making up this story, and then, she has 100 people a day coming through, this tour guide, and now these people are listening to her story. They're believing that this little girl in a nightgown runs up and down the stairs, and you can hear her pitter-patter feet, and you can hear her laughter. Guess what? After a couple of months of her telling that story with 100 to 200 people per day, all of a sudden we started getting EVPs and video night vision activity of a little girl in a nightgown running around the admin building. It never existed before then. That is your perfect example of an egregore. And that was manifested with just 2 months of telling that story. Imagine the power that demons have from the goddamn Bible. Okay? Now we're talking about intelligent hauntings. We're talking about residual energy that responds to belief systems. Entities that grow stronger when investigators bring in fear, specifically prayer, crosses, Bible verses. You're saying a Bible verse out of fear because you're scared something's there. You're wearing a cross out of fear. Now, don't take the words out of my mouth and say, Krystal, what are you saying? Don't take a cross. Don't say the Bible verse. No, I'm not saying that. Don't take words out of my mouth. Do whatever you need to do to feel protected. But what I'm saying is the system has been set up with that entity to understand that when you say a Bible verse, it acts out even more because it senses your fear. The Bible verse, the cross, the crystals, the protection that you have, it has now been triggered to understand that is you showing fear. Locations where demonic activity seem to be directionally proportional with actual religious history, the space of terror where people died, the observation of paranormal investigators. They arrive afraid, they leave afraid, they claim something's attached to them. I'm not saying it didn't happen. Don't take words out of my mouth. But why is it that the investigators with sovereignty and no fear don't leave with attachments? Now, I'm not saying I haven't left with attachments before. I have left with attachments, but I have never left with a, quote, demonic attachment. Not once. Never. Hundreds of locations, being a producer for 15 years, and not once had I had a demon follow me home. What do I call it all the time? It's a daemon. So my question is, when do you stop accepting the framework that you were handed? The religious trauma, the religious fear. I have stood in rooms where people have screamed, "The power of Christ compels you," aka Bobby Mackey's. There was an actual exorcism done there. I've stood in that room. I don't know. It's kind of like a thesis. You know what I mean? Is it a demon or is it an egregore? I'm going to go with the egregore. The demon is an egregore. I don't think a demon is an actual entity. I think it's collective energy that has been created by the collective. I mean, let's just break this down. What we label demonic is one of three things, okay? A tulpa, or a thought form built from sustained human fear and projection by the masses. Could be a corrupted or fragmented human consciousness that's still floating around in the gray zone. This human consciousness has chosen not to cross over for whatever reason it may be. It's now been warped by the trauma that it suffered in its life. Addiction, violence, a horrible death, or it's a natural, intelligent form from another dimension, right? It has bandwidth somehow. We can't explain it. It's neither good nor evil. I mean, humans are the ones that moralize those terms, not the other side. But that responds only in the way the energy is fed. Because here's another example. When I've been investigating, I call shit out. Right? Especially through like Ouija boards or even like spirit box, something will come through and be like demon or something dark. And I'm like, bullshit, prove it. The second I call it out, all of a sudden it fizzes out. Where'd you go, little bitch? You don't want to fight now? You don't want to talk? It's not a demon. That's the name it knows. It's trying to see if you can feed off fear. Is it actually a demon? Maybe it's a human spirit trying to scare the shit out of you. Most people are going to be like, my God, it just said demon. I'm going to freak out. And guess what? Every single paranormal show that we have watched up until this point tells you that it is what? Fucking demon. All of these paranormal shows that we watch are feeding into the same religious trauma bullshit that's been going on for 2,000 years. And I'm sick of the cycle, so let's break it. The religion and religious framework around demonology was constructed as a control mechanism for the masses. Are you listening to me? Do I need to repeat it? Did you hear what I just said? Religious framework around demonology was constructed as a control mechanism for the masses. And the paranormal community is feeding it and making it even worse. And it just pisses me off. Name something terrifying. Tell people that only your institution can protect them from it. Only our religion, only Catholicism can protect you from a demon. Now you have compliance for forever. That is not theology, that is politics. Drops the mic. Religious framework around demonology was constructed as a control mechanism. And guess what? And here's what just burns my toast more than anything else. The paranormal community inherited the framework on wholesale and built the entertainment industry out of this shit. The paranormal community inherited the framework from religious trauma as a wholesale purchase and built an entertainment industry out of it. Jump cuts to black, screaming with dramatic music, "Oh my God, dude, it's a demon." Whispered warnings, "Be careful, bro." It's all egregoric amplification. More fear, more viewers, more energy fed to create the thing you're claiming to investigate. The paranormal community, in many cases, is one of the largest unintentional egregore feeding operations on the internet, in my opinion. And I say this as someone who's been a part of it. Possibly all of these energies carry consciousness. I assume consciousness evolves with discernment, with curiosity, with sovereignty rather than victim energy. Let's not be naive. Let's create sovereignty here. God, I'm tired already. Like, do you see what I'm saying? Please tell me you understand what I'm saying. This is a crossing. I am at a crossing, and I will lead the paranormal industry into the next phase because I'm so sick of this shit. It's not even funny. I will no longer help feed into the religious trauma as an entertainment mechanism. I'm no longer willing to produce content that feeds the fear machine. My content moving forward is educational, empowering, authentic experience of what I'm actually seeing, not performance. That was the patriarchy, not the women, not the matriarchy. The patriarchy is the one that goes with ego. I don't need performance. Of course, I'll still cover and go to dark locations and have experiences there, heavy energies, real encounters, but through the lens of a practitioner and a teacher, not a reactor, not an entertainer. Ghost Girl Diaries from here on out is about being one with the underworld, coming back with knowledge, not trauma, not entertainment, not manufactured terror to create more egregores. I think I want more theory, more deeper dives, more actual belief system, more of what I've learned, received, and experienced in those rooms. 9 times out of 10, what I'm experiencing in some of the darkest locations isn't a fucking demon. It's an energy that had a really screwed up traumatic life and can't find the light. What if that was your family? It's questions we have to ask ourselves. What if the scariest thing in the room isn't the entity? What if it's the belief that's within you? What if the paranormal isn't supernatural at all? What if it's just natural? What if we've been mislabeling it for 2,000 years? What if sovereignty, not scripture, is the most protective protection that you have, not the Bible? I'm not here to talk about religion specifically or call a certain religion out. I'm not here to talk about politics. I'm here to talk about power. And in my opinion, the oldest form of power on the planet is convincing people that darkness lives out there, and if you're not careful, it will live within you. It lives in that entity, in that location, in that symbol, in the word witch. It's dark, right? The actual harm is being done inside the institution, telling you to be afraid, and you're believing it. The Epstein files didn't surprise me. They've confirmed something that I've felt in the darkest rooms for years. True darkness doesn't announce itself with the smell of sulfur. True darkness doesn't sound like growling. It wears a suit. It sits in a pew and it prays. It pretends to be your friend and negotiates sex for money. It writes the policy you have to follow, the scripture you have to follow. It signs the legislation. It shakes hands with other powerful people just to protect its own, not the people. That's an egregore, not the thing on the other side of the veil. The egregore is the thing that has caused silence within the collective complicity, collective willingness to look away because we feel helpless. The paranormal community has spent decades terrified of something behind abandoned walls, abandoned hospitals, asylums, while the institutions that built those locations were doing something far worse. And now we see because it's been brought to light. They've been calling themselves holy while they did it. They've been calling themselves holy while they did it. Here's what I want you to sit with. The same institutions that built the framework of demonic fear, the same institutions that told you sin leads to hell, that darkness is coming for you, you need protection, you have to use their scripture, their salvation. Those are the same institutions that are connected to the Epstein files. Those are the networks that we see production companies on. Those are the production companies. Those are the men in suits, the ones I've been dealing with for 15 years. And guess what? I'm not speculating now because now this is public record. And I want to ask you something, right? If the people who built the concept of the demon, who named it, codified it, weaponized it against the public, if those are the same people engaging in some of the darkest possible harm against vulnerable people on earth, women, children, babies, then what does that tell you that the egregore was actually built, and who does it protect? It protects the system. It was never about saving your soul. It was about controlling your attention. Keep your eyes on the monster behind the veil so you never look at the monster that's actually shaking your hand and taking your money on Sundays. That is the egregore completing its circuit and it's done a fine job, right? The fear machine is now feeding itself. The institution is casting out demons with one hand while becoming the egregore on the other. They are the demon. That's the truest definition of demonic activity if you've ever asked me. I'm more afraid of demonic activity that played out in these Epstein files more than I am of a haunted location. That's true demonic activity, not an asylum, not a growl, not a shadow figure, a web of powerful people that have played specific rules, protecting institutional silence, willing to allow harm done to children, and calling themselves holy while they do it. That's what I've felt in these rooms. Not a standalone entity from another dimension, not the residue of darkness. This darkness was sustained by human complicity, made powerful by collective silence. That is your demon. 15 years in production, 17 film festival wins. I've sat across tables at a table from some of the most powerful, wealthy men you'll ever experience, right? I've negotiated with them back and forth. Men backed by networks, backed by production companies, unlimited wealth, millions of dollars, throw it down like it's chump change. Backed by the same institution of money that funds the religious organizations. Some of them are showing up in those files. And I was told over and over again that my credentials were not the currency that they were interested in. My experience as a producer was not enough for currency. A man with my resume would have walked in that room and he would have walked out with a contract. I walked out with a proposition for sex almost every time. That's why I'm not shocked, because I've experienced it. That's the system. That's the institution. That's the egregore of power, sustained by silence, by women who couldn't afford to speak up, by an industry that trained us to, perform just enough credibility to be useful, while making sure we were silenced enough to never become threatening, to never expose them. And part of that training, the part that I, want to talk about today, was this: do not mention psychic abilities. If you're a woman, you're a witch or the devil. Do not mention mediumship. Do not speak about what you actually experience on these investigations, because if you do, you're crazy and we'll label you that way. You're unreliable. If you're a woman with psychic medium abilities, we'll burn you at the stake next. You're unhireable unless you have sex with us for your contract. There's still no guarantee of a contract even if you do sleep with us. Because a woman who can walk between worlds doesn't fit the narrative that they sell. I didn't fit the narrative they were trying to sell. The Bible doesn't have very many flattering chapters about women, unfortunately, probably because it was written by men. Bible doesn't talk about women seeing, through the veil. And the networks funded by those institutions aren't going to platform one. So I performed, I produced, I delivered, I won, and I kept my real work quiet. My real experience is this opinion that I'm sharing today. I left the institution and it wasn't an accident, it was deliberate. That was not a career pivot per se. That was an act of spiritual self-preservation. There's only so much you can take of, sexual harassment and, being looked at like a piece of meat in the industry when you've worked so hard to build your credentials and your resume. There's only so much you can take. It starts to wear you down after a while, because I really can't stand in my true purpose. I can't do what I'm actually here to do while I'm performing for other people who expect me to remain small and silenced. I mean, the channel, the podcast, Ghost Girl Diaries, what I'm building, it exists because I finally stopped asking for permission. They weren't going to give me permission anyways. So here's what changes. I'm a psychic medium. I'm a dream walker. I have prophetic dreams. I've had those since I was a child. I wasn't allowed to say that because for 15 years the institutions told me not to. That's over now. My paranormal career will no longer be filtered through the institution's expectations. It was framework designed to protect my, quote, credibility. Instead, you're going to get my actual experiences, actual theories, my actual theology behind paranormal on the other side, which doesn't look like anything you've seen on major network. Because major networks weren't going to be willing to hold this. I will not perform for mere engagement. I will not manufacture drama for dopamine. I will not pretend that the scariest thing I've encountered has claws and hooves. It's the men in suits. The veil is real, and what's on the other side is real. And it's far more nuanced. It's more sovereign, more ancient than any religion that's ever been built on this planet. mainly because the religions are all man-made. And I want to close today by giving you something to carry out of this conversation. Don't fear, because we have enough of that going on, and the world is completely crazy at the moment, and you need to be sovereign. Remember that the world wants your nervous system wrecked, because that also keeps egregores and institutions in control. So take care of yourself first. The darkness that you've been taught to fear, the demon, the shadow, the thing at the threshold or at the bottom of your bed at night, it may not be your enemy, it might be your information. It's energy somehow in motion. In many cases, energies react to you as a mirror because you're matching their frequency. And mirrors are only terrifying when you're not ready to see what's in them. The real darkness, the darkness that I've witnessed operate behind the scenes for 15 years, the darkness that's now being dragged out into public and what you're seeing, whether it's institutions or people, that darkness has always worn a human face. So what do you fear in the shadow? It has always operated in mere daylight, so why are you afraid of the dark? It has always been protected by the silence of people who looked away. That's the egregore. That's what we've been feeding. So here's what I want to ask you to do. As an investigator who's been in those rooms, as a psychic medium who has communicated with the other side, as someone who's survived the industry, who they've tried to purchase my silence in exchange, stop outsourcing your discernment. Let me repeat it again. Stop outsourcing your discernment. The fear they handed you was on a leash. Sovereignty is knowing that you were never in danger with the veil. You were in danger from the people telling you to be afraid of it. You have everything you've ever needed to walk into the dark. Just like Persephone descends down into the underworld, you go in the dark, it's scary, you don't have a flashlight, but somehow you make it out. That's shadow work, that's healing. You can't be afraid and fear the darkness. You have all the tools within you. So I want to build this together without permission from the institutions, without permission from the producers and the production companies, standing in solitude and hoping, eventually the rest of the paranormal community catches on. But this is the future now. I'm going to build without permission, without apology, without a filter, because this was designed by people who wanted us to be quiet. What's the old saying? We are the witches that you can't burn. And the last note I want to leave you with is, please use your discernment with how much media and things that you're consuming right now. I am filming normal content because we all need an outlet. So come into my underworld, fashion, makeup, paranormal, and let's escape the craziness of this planet. And, remember, being in paranormal, being spiritual, being somehow connected to the other side, which is why you're here. There's a reason that you're helping do grid work, healing grid work on the planet right now. We need healers to be here right now to anchor us in because of the absolute craziness that's happening all over the world. And it's not just America, it's everywhere. The Epstein files were not just America, it was everywhere, every single continent. Be careful what you're consuming, babe, okay? And I'm wrapping it up for this time on Paranormal Podcast. I don't know what next episode's going to be. They're not always going to be this heavy. But I had a lot to say that needed to be said. And that's a wrap on today's episode of Ghost Girl Diaries. Thank you so much for joining me in my crypt. If you loved what you heard, be sure to subscribe, like, and comment. It helps the ghostly adventures continue. And also don't forget to follow me on all social media platforms. You can search for Krystal Leandra or Ghost Girl Diaries. Please support me on both. This is where you can catch exclusive content, behind the scenes footage, and stay up to date on all things paranormal and glam. And as always, stay curious, stay fearless, and stay spooky. And I'll catch you next time on Ghost Girl Diaries, where the dead never rest, and neither do we. Until then, my ghoulish friends, sweet screams.